Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all today. So, today I'll be talking about the Diamond Sutra. So, the Diamond Sutra is the oldest surviving printed book in the world. A copy of it was found in a secret library cave in China, and now remains permanently held in the British Library's collection. So if you go to the British Library, you can see the oldest surviving printed book in the world, the Diamond Sutra. One day, the Buddha went around to collect alms as usual, and then he returned to the monastery, mindfully ate, mindfully washed, arranged his cushion, and sat down. And he was greeted by Venerable Subhuti, who bowed and showed up with a series of questions stemming from his very first question, which was, "World-honored one, if sons and daughters of good families want to raise to the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind, what should they rely on? And what should they do to master their thinking?" To which the Buddha replied, "This is how the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas master their thinking. However many species of living beings there are, whether born from eggs, from the womb, from moisture, or spontaneously, whether they have form or do not have form, whether they have perceptions or do not have perceptions, or whether it cannot be said of them that they have perceptions or do not have perceptions, we must lead all beings to the ultimate nirvana so that they can be liberated. And when this innumerable, immeasurable, infinite number of beings has become liberated, we do not, in truth, think that a single being has been liberated." Why is this so? If, Subhuti, a bodhisattva holds on to the idea that a self, a person, a living being, or a lifespan exists, that person is not an authentic bodhisattva. So liberating beings, helping others, while dissolving the idea that there is any being to be helped and that there is a helper. So the name for the Diamond Sutra is the Vajrachetaka Prajna Paramita, the diamond that cuts through illusion. So Prajna Paramita means perfection of wisdom. It's one of the paramitas that we chanted earlier today. And probably at some point in the next months or so, we'll have some talks on another Prajna Paramita Sutra, the Heart Sutra. So when we talk about the diamond that cuts through illusion, we're cutting through our sense of a separate self. So dissolving the false distinction between subject and object, perceiver and perceived, self and other. True wisdom arrives when we realize that reality is simply a projection of the conditioned mind. So the Diamond Sutra is a conversation between the Buddha and his disciple Subhuti about the emptiness of the paramitas. So the paramitas are qualities to perfect, and the simultaneous importance of still practicing them. So I'm not going to narrate the whole story of the sutra. That's for you to study and practice. What I'll be discussing is the essence of it and what I've learned from it. So when we talk about reality being a projection of the conditioned mind, this is a big part of Yogacara philosophy in Buddhism, the mind-only philosophy, which is emphasized in is also emphasized in the Lankavatara Sutra. So Chan or Zen used to actually be called the Lanka school, and then the Diamond Sutra became more dominant in Zen. So there's a lot of focus on emptiness in the Diamond Sutra and in Mahayana in general. So we hear a lot about emptiness, and it can be a little bit confusing. Does this mean that nothing exists, that there's no point? Not exactly. When we say that something is empty, that does not mean that it's hollow. It has to be empty of something. So what could things be empty of? They're empty of a separate, permanent self. And they are full of all things. So a better translation for shunyata, which is emptiness, might be boundlessness rather than emptiness. I believe it might have been Thich Nhat Hanh who suggested that. And the Diamond Sutra teaches through something called dialectics. So dialectics is around how two things or multiple things can be true at the same time, through paradox. We see this in, for example, I'm a trauma therapist, we see this in dialectical behavior therapy. Dialectical behavior therapy was actually created by a Zen priest, Marsha Linehan. And in that therapy, they're emphasizing a lot of different dialectics, primarily the dialectic between acceptance and change. So accepting I am good enough, and change in terms of there are still some things I need to work on. So some people might go too far on the extreme. Acceptance, if I'm good enough, that means I don't need to change anything about myself and I don't need to do any work on myself, and I'm fine how I am. Other people will go on the other extreme. If there's even the slightest thing that I could improve, then that means I'm worthless, I'm terrible. How could I ever accept anything about myself? So in dialectical behavior therapy, the dialectic is in the middle. I am good enough and I have things to work on. So in the Diamond Sutra, there's a dialectic between relative and ultimate reality. So when I realized this, I began wondering if maybe the Diamond Sutra is what laid the foundation for the creation of koans, these mysterious dialogues between master and student in Zen that cut through intellectualizing and labeling. So relative reality, also known as conventional reality, is our everyday, normal understanding of the world. Things have words, and we describe them as such. Ultimate reality or absolute reality, this is a deep knowing of the non-self of things. So in relative reality, a cup contains tea. In ultimate reality, a cup contains the universe. And we need a balance of both. So we can't have one without the other. We're not trying to only live in ultimate reality. We still need relative reality in order to communicate. So I'll give you an example of these dialectics in the Diamond Sutra. So Subhuti asked the Buddha, "World-honored one, is the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind that the Buddha has attained the unattainable?" The Buddha said, "That's right, Subhuti. Regarding the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind, I have not attained anything. That is why it is called the highest, most awakened, fulfilled mind. Furthermore, Subhuti, that mind is everywhere equally. Because it is neither high nor low, it is called the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind. The fruit of the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind is realized through the practice of all wholesome actions in the spirit of non-self, non-person, non-living being, and non-lifespan. Subhuti, what are called wholesome actions are in fact not wholesome actions. That is why they are called wholesome actions. So when we first listen to this or read it, it may seem incomprehensible. So we need to contemplate it until the meaning reveals itself. So here we see the dialectic of attaining the unattainable. But the Buddha practiced for years before he became enlightened. Didn't he attain something? Maybe he realized something that was there all along. So we also see how the concept of wholesome actions is limiting. If the left hand is injured, the right hand might automatically come over to soothe the left hand. It does not see itself as separate. It doesn't congratulate itself for generating good merit or good karma for helping the other hand. It doesn't think, but if I help the other hand, I won't have time to do these other things. It doesn't think, that other hand should be more independent and know how to help itself. It just automatically does it because one hand does not see the other hand as separate. So we're practicing generosity with no concept of helper and the help and the helped. So no helper, no helped. So these things are worth contemplating. So I'll share another excerpt where the Buddha discusses Dharma talks like this one and the concept of no self. The Buddha said, Subhuti, do not say that the Tathagata, meaning the Buddha, conceived the idea, I will give a teaching. Do not think that way. Why? If anyone says that the Tathagata has something to teach, that person slanders the Buddha because he does not understand what I say. Subhuti, giving a Dharma talk in fact means that no talk is given. This is truly a Dharma talk. Then the Insight Life Subhuti said to the Buddha, World-honored one, in the future, will there be living beings who feel complete confidence when they hear these words? And the Buddha said, Subhuti, those living beings are neither living beings nor non-living beings. Why is that? Subhuti, what the Tathagata calls non-living beings are truly living beings. So these dialects or koans can seem a bit confusing at first as they cut through our everyday conditioned mode of understanding the world, so they may seem incomprehensible at first. So you'll want to sit with these and allow their meaning to unfold naturally, but not in an intellectual way, but in an aha moment kind of way. So once you think you've got it, you may not have got it. So you want to detach from you, detach from got it or not got it, detach from it, detach from the helper, detach from the concept of the helped. So we talked about a cup of water or tea earlier in terms of relative and ultimate reality. The water or the tea, the water in the cup is made of non-water elements. It used to be a cloud, and it will become a cloud again when we think of precipitation. The cloud gets absorbed in this body when it's drank, and it later goes back to the earth. Part of the water gets evaporated by the sun, part of it goes into the ocean and is not separate from the rest of the water. Part of it is absorbed by the soil, which meets a tea seed and then becomes a plant, a tea plant. The cycle of rebirth continues. This is how rebirth happens without a self. Every day we can remind ourselves of this with the meal gata. So with each meal, we say, in this food, I see clearly the presence of the entire universe supporting my existence. And the 5 contemplations. This food is the gift of the whole universe, the earth, the sky, numerous living beings, and much hard loving work. May I eat with mindfulness and gratitude so as to be worthy to receive it. May I recognize and transform my unwholesome mental formations, especially my greed, and learn to eat with moderation. May I keep my compassion alive by eating in such a way that I reduce the suffering of living beings and preserve my planet. I accept this food so I may nurture my Sangha, chosen family and friends, strengthen my communities, and nourish my ideal of serving all living beings. So we see it in the first, especially of the 5 contemplations. The food is the gift of the whole universe. All things are contained in that cup of tea. A cup of tea has seen many, many rebirths. When I began my Zen priest training, one of the very first things that Sukho Tịnh Quang said to us was, see everything as a miracle. I was eating the other day, experiencing how the universe is feeding the universe, and I realized that I'm beginning to understand what she meant a couple years ago. In this way, it's hard to disrespect food and to disrespect yourself by eating while multitasking in front of the TV or your phone. So knowing this, can we really call the tea by the word tea? Thich Nhat Hanh, in his translation, I think I've got it here. This is a good translation of the Diamond Sutra. It's The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion, commentaries on the Prajnaparamita Diamond Sutra. So in that, I believe it's in that translation, he talks about how the sword of conceptualization cuts reality into pieces. So words and language limit us. They will never adequately describe reality. Yet we still need to find a way to communicate. That is relative reality. Neither one are more important than the other. Some people live only in relative or conventional reality and never seek ultimate, also known as absolute understanding. They don't take the time to develop wisdom and compassion. Other people think that they're living in ultimate reality, but they're attached to ultimate reality as a concept. Then, when people try to bring them back down to earth, they say that those people are too attached to their identities. So we see a lot of misunderstandings of ultimate reality being used as a weapon against queer people, women, racialized people, and minorities. But those the weaponization of ultimate reality against minoritized groups is based off of a strong misunderstanding of the different elements of reality. So we have to have both relative and ultimate reality to exist. They're mutually dependent. So you'll want to speak of relative reality, because we need to communicate, like I said, while not being attached to the concepts that are spoken of. And while maintaining an awareness that the words themselves will never be an accurate description of the universe. So practicing the Diamond Sutra is important. We don't want to just hear it or read it, we want to practice it. But how do we practice a sutra? This is something for you to realize on your own in daily life. I'll share that one method of practicing it that happened organically for me, often randomly throughout my day, as I began contemplating all the wondrous elements that things around me are made up of. That this computer, these people in front of me, contain the entire universe, and even the concept of the universe is a linguistic limit that does not adequately capture reality. You can practice it when eating, like I mentioned. I began to see how silly such things as hatred can be. Two beings confused into thinking that they are beings, into thinking that they are separate selves, when they are composed of clouds, consciousness, and air. Two beings that will soon unite when they again become clouds, are arguing. It's as silly as a cloud in the sky hating another cloud in the sky, not realizing that the two will soon merge to become one big cloud, and then will drop down as rain and then come back up again. That does not mean that we do not act on injustices or set boundaries. I'm just talking about ultimate reality for a moment. So you allow the sutra to gradually transform the way that you view the world, while also detaching from an idea of you and an idea of viewing and an idea of the world. So maintaining an awareness of ultimate reality in the back of your mind while still functioning in the world on an ultimate level. On a relative level. I found haiku poetry to be an excellent vehicle for that, and maybe someday I'll give a talk on it, on haiku. So I'll leave you with a rather poetic quote from the last page of the Diamond Sutra. All composed things are like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. That is how to meditate on them. That is how to observe them. I'll leave you with that today. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.